subsidy removal, the government was owing the Nnpc over 4 trillion when Tinubu took over, Bayo Onanuga says. So why was the government of Buhari owing Nnpc over 4 trillion? How did it happen? And the Nnpc was still remitting the national proceeds to the same federal treasury. So how did it happen? Who was there in Buhari's government that will come and tell us that this was true or not true? Because right now it's going to be the word of Tinubu and his cabinet against Buhari and his cabinet. And Buhari and his cabinet are not available to come and defend themselves. So what did they do with the whole 4 trillion? How? And where the Nnpc see this 4 trillion to offset this payment on subsidy while waiting for federal government to reimburse them. These people, when they say something, they thought they could just drop a bombshell and nobody will pick it on the bombshell to understand the settings, to understand the content. So, Tinubu, Buhari government owed Nnpc 4 trillion on subsidy, and before Tinubu took over. Is it true? And 4 trillion is not a joke. So does it mean that for over a year or 2 years, Nigerian government was not paying subsidy, and Nnpc was paying on behalf of government and never reimbursed? Big questions need to be answered here. Bayo Onanuga need to throw more light into what he's saying. But let's dive into the details. Mr. Bayo Onanuga, who happens to be the special advisor to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on information and strategy, during an interview with the Nigerian Tribune, has spoken on one of the reasons for the subsidy removal that was implemented by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, while he was talking, he said that it was necessary because the Nigerian economy was already in shambles and that the federal government was owing Nnpc the sum of 4 trillion naira for subsidy payment. He said the economy was really in shambles by the time Tinubu took over. The government was owing the Nnpc over 4 trillion. Debt servicing was eating up the entire revenue of the government. The CBN reportedly spent $1.5 billion monthly to support Naira to keep the value artificially low. Further talking, he said that the federal government borrowed a lot of money, so there was no way they could have continued along the trajectory. So he said that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led government is trying to put a lot of things in place to make sure the economy is put on the sounder footing. Can you imagine? So the question is, why not go and drag this man called Buhari back to come and explain how a whole 4 trillion naira was spent, okay, and they didn't want to pay back Nnpc that money on subsidy? I don't understand. With all the money they were borrowing from China and from other parts of the world, from International Monetary Fund, from the World Bank, and all of that, they were borrowing money and taking grants. What were they doing with it? What? And from what Bayo is saying, that debt servicing was, eating the nation's revenue. We know that it will eat the nation's revenue because Buhari was borrowing indiscriminately and they were sharing it. Between Buhari, the CBN, the Minister of Finance, and the Attorney General of the Federation, they need to tell us what they did with the money. Because obviously, that money is somewhere and somebody spent it, somebody is holding it. So why will Nnpc be paying on behalf of federal government 4 trillion or over 4 trillion for petrol subsidy? Meanwhile, federal government never reimbursed Nnpc that money. I want to believe it's not true. I really want to believe it's not true. This country, I fear who not fear Nigeria. I fear who not fear Nigerian politicians. It is quite a very terrible situation, I must say. And people are already reacting here and people are making their comment. Thomas said, Nnpc that refused to remit billions of dollars has turned around claiming government owed them. I don't know the type of heartless tips we Nigerians have in government. Buhari was Minister of Petroleum for 8 years. Between the government and Nnpcl, who's supposed to remit money to each other, Nigeria has turned to a banana criminals heaven for thieves. Exactly. So if NNP is supposed to remit and it's not remitting, Buhari was Minister of Petroleum for 8 years. So what did he do? So there's no difference between the Nnpc and the Buhari's government and the executive. So these people, I'm telling you, it is real thieves. And they're telling us again that Emefiele, the former CBN governor, was paying about 1.6 billion naira, 1.8 billion naira every month to sustain the value of naira in the naira's exchange rate. What? Who does that? Okay, that's $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion monthly to support naira to keep the value artificially low. How? Who does that? Paying to who? So where this 1 point something billion that they were doing, why should they do it? Is there no other thing that can be done to sustain the value of the naira? Now, wow. I'm telling you, Nnpc and Tinubu and Buhari, they are both the same. Now, Tinubu is Minister of Petroleum, again with the same Nnpc. Though Nnpc has been now privatized, well, that is if it's privatized. Because now we really can't draw the demarcation between Nnpc now and the regulatory body, which is DPR, which was formerly a subsidiary of Nnpc. So is Nnpc, even after being privatized, still regulating? That is a big question that we need to answer. Regulating both the upstream and downstream sector of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, we need to be sure. So let's talk about this money. A whole 4 trillion. Something needs to be done. As always, a country that has been sold to crooks. Of course, the country was not sold to crooks. Crooks actually hijacked the country. Because if you say sold, it looks like somebody, a conscious and a conscientious Nigerian sold it. They hijacked it. That is it. So my only Jagaban of Africa, president of Nigeria, sir, who is government and who is Nnpc, that you are owing 4 trillion? A very big question. You're not going to answer that one. That is it. Okay. Now, liar Mohammed will be a child's play to Onanuga. Nnpc should be remitting money to the government. Tinubu want 4 trillion. You see the frog eyes man called Jaga Bandit. Abacha loot will be a child's play compared to what this man will do Nigeria. Not be lie, but we really need to. The thing is just, the more you look, the less you see in this country. It's very disheartening when you hear some kind of things. You weep for Nigeria. See why Nigeria will obviously not move forward. Now they say Nnpc is owing federal government, or federal government is owing Nnpc 4 trillion. That money, they're going to generate it and send across to Nnpc, and it will be used for something else. Because normally it is the money that Nnpc is remitting to federal government that federal government is spending to fund the Nigerian budget. So how come the report is coming the other way around? That's a very big question, actually. Unfortunately, by the comment we have read, it shows people lack the knowledge and understanding of governance. The few that knows it shy away for political affiliations. But be rest assured, Nigeria will work again under this Tinubu administration. Okay, we are waiting. Somebody said, God bless you. The same way I am reading too. A lot of them knows nothing about governance. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Assurance. Tell us what it is. Somebody said, please, how? What was Nnpc using crude oil swap for? Everything is abracadabra in Nigeria. And that is true. Abacha loot will be a child's play compared to what Jagabandit will loot in Nigeria. Who is government and who is Nnpc? And that is it. That's a very big question. All these stories of looting crude oil monies by the government officials is because Niger Delta leaders are sleeping. When the youth wake up, okay, these stories will change. Exactly. They need to change the story because the way the thing they go, we'll wake up one day and see that Nigeria is no longer Nigeria. Either China or one other country that borrowed money from would have changed Nigeria's name to something else. So thank you for listening, and let's have a comment.